हेलो हेलो।
हेलो सर।
गुड आफ्टरनून ऑल। आज के वेबिनार सीरीज नंबर 4 में अटेंडीज जो भी फिजियोथेरेपी स्टूडेंट्स है, आज की जो पैनलिस्ट है उनका मैं न्यू इंडियन एजुकेशन रिसर्च सोसाइटी संचालित श्री उधोराम फिजियोथेरेपी कॉलेज की मैनेजमेंट टीम के प्रतिनिधि के तौर पर आप सबका हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूँ। सबसे पहले आज के जो पैनलिस्ट है उसमें जो रिसोर्स पर्सन, जो वो शख्सियत डॉक्टर सर्वानंद सर, जिसके बारे में जो भी बोला जाए वो कम है। हमारी संस्था के जब नींव रखी गई थी तब से आज तक उनका जो हमें गाइडेंस मिला है और पूरा एकदम कंटिन्यूअस जो सपोर्ट, कहीं भी हम अटके हैं, जब कभी भी हम फोन करते कोई भी मार्गदर्शन के लिए उसका अप्रोच करते तो वो पूरी एक जैसा बोलता है ना कि तैयारी है होते है कि चलो ये करो ये करो ये करो। अभी भी उनका ये जो सपोर्ट है वो हमें मिल रहा है। और आज उनका टॉपिक है सर्चिंग रिसर्च। आगे का मैं टेक ओवर देता हूँ डॉक्टर मेहुल कॉन्ट्रैक्टर और कृतिका मैम को, जो सर के बारे में वो आपको पूरा विवरण देंगे।
Thank you, Prakash sir. Good evening to all the students, all the viewers, faculty members, clinicians. Good evening to all. The message that I would like to pass to everyone is that today's topic is very interesting, searching research. I have heard many of the students, sir, ये theory नहीं आती है, थोड़ा बता दो. सर वो theory नहीं आती है, थोड़ा सिखा दो. सर ये technique कैसे थी, पता नहीं पड़ी, थोड़ा बता दो. So many queries has been raised and came into my professional life के जो related to theory, related to practicals आई है. But today's day what we are going to target is one of the highlighted query, that is searching research. How to find a research article in a right way, in a right manner, to whom we call as it is an exact article. How to find a research. Probably it would be quite more interesting when you see that practically, when the Sarvanand sir will show everything, okay, on the screen. So the message that I would like to pass on to all the viewers, that keep ready all your questions and shoot as many as questions that you have regarding the research. We have our inbox. In that you can put your all the queries. Our resource person Dr. Sarvanand sir, he will solve the whole queries. And top on that, I would like to request to all the viewers that after this webinar, try to your own at least once, twice, thrice, those especially who are in PG, those who are working in clinical setup department, evidence-based practice. If you get any of the cases for the shoulder, for the knee, if you find evidences like how to deal with that particular situation, so how to find that research article to have an impact over that particular patient. And for the final year students especially, they are going for an internship in upcoming few months. So at that time, you might be having project work and all. So at that point of time, how will you deal with the research article? How will you search that research article? That is very important. Okay, so now, not wasting much of your time, I would like to hand it over to our Dr. Kritika ma'am, one of our faculty VN Patel Medical Campus, Sriyodaram Physiotherapy College. She will brief about our respected resource person, and then we'll start the whole session. Thank you.
Good evening to all viewers. Myself, Dr. Krutika. I would like to welcome our today's guest speaker, Dr. Sarvanan. He is working presently as Principal in Charge at Sarvajanik College of Physiotherapy, Surat. He is working there since 2003. He has completed his master's from GNDU Amritsar in sports physiotherapy. Sir is a PhD scholar. Sir has published many articles in well-known journals. Sir has presented papers at many national and international conferences. Among them, at 2017 was WCPT. He was not only the Indian but also from all over, only one person to present all over Asia, only one person to present paper over there. He has been awarded by IAP. So he also guides many students for their internship and PG program. Among them was me. I feel proud to be guided by him during my bachelor's and master's. So many of you might not find research as an interesting topic, but I assure you all people that by the end of this lecture, your opinion will be changed because sir will solve all your queries regarding research. So we warmly welcome you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Krutika. Thank you for those kind words, Dr. Prakash, Dr. Mehul, and Dr. Krutika. Thank you for inviting me on this platform, webinar series organized by VN Patel Medical Campus. And a small change on the introduction given to me. I was not the only Indian at AWP WCPT. I was the only Indian in the scientific peer review process, the scientific committee. And there were lots of Indians who presented paper over there. I mean,
yes,
I did not send a wrong message
yes,
anyway.
Yes,
but thank you for those kind words. And research, before I begin with, when Dr. Mehul suggested me to go for a webinar, I asked him like, what topic should I, are you interested with? Like, I was expecting some technique-based topic he might be suggesting me based on my specialty, that sports physiotherapy. I thought he might be asking me to go on some technique-based topic, which normally I don't prefer to go into. But to my surprise, he said like, sir, please talk on research. I was surprised because research is a topic which is so dry and vague. And most of the, I asked him like, who is the target audience? So he said like most of the students. I said like, I mean, will they be interested to sit and listen? So he said like, that's what they're supposed to do because since we have a project, small research project and internship, it would be help for them to get their queries solved and especially the basics of how to search research an article or a journal. So I was so happy to take up this topic because you have a scope to explain a lot of things to students and you can expect questions as well. Like, so when a technique based topic is being taken, normally students are more concerned about the technique, how to do that set like, and the basis of most of the techniques we're not bothered about. We become a more technician sort of as compared to physiotherapist like. Whereas when you talk about a research topic, definitely it's an area where there are lots of loopholes, you can say. Lacuna is there and probably more questions, as Dr. Mehul rightly said, like I'm expecting more questions to be shot on me during or after the presentation. So before starting, like we have a chat box at the bottom. So I'll be interacting with people rather than having a one-way speech. I'm interested in interacting with people. So I'm putting some questions and probably I'm expecting participants to respond through the chat box. So warm good evening to everyone. I'm sharing my screen so that we can start with the presentation. So hope everybody is able to see the screen. So the topic of today's webinar is Searching Research. Yes, I'm Dr. Saravanan. I'm Associate Professor and Principal in Charge from Sarvajanik College of Physiotherapy, Surat. So I'd like to know the category of people present in this webinar today. So can I have a quick response in the chat box? If you are a student, are there students available presently in this webinar? If you are a BPT student, please type YRS in the chat box. Well, any responses? We will be interacting. So there's going to be happening. So in fact, you can see the fastest fingers. Right, yes, we have BPT students from different years. Yes, we do have master students. Okay, that is good. Academicians are there. Do we have clinical therapists? Do you have practicing physiotherapist here? Any practicing physiotherapist? Yes. Okay. So probably like I have prepared the presentation according to suiting for almost all the category of professionals, whether you're a student, you're a researcher, you're a clinical therapist, or an academician, whatever. But still, if there is any discrepancies or difficulties in getting through this material, you can just raise your hands up or drop a message in the chat box. So beginning with, these are the contents what you're going to deal with. We're going to just see a brief introduction of what research is. And rather than talking about what research is, why research is required in physiotherapy or in our field. What a good research is and what are the characteristics of a bad research, because we have a good research, there should be something called as bad research. What is that? And then of course, we are trying to get into the main component of searching research, and the contents of those searching research component is when to search research, what to search in research, and where to search and how to search. Except for the last how to search component, everything else is theoretical in nature. The last component will be a bit of technicality, which we'll be discussing. So why research? So again, I want some responses from you. Why do you think research is required? Why is research required? It can be a one-line answer. It can be a one-word answer. Probably I can lead you to some answers, like PG students can say that it is a compulsion in our PG. So we have to do. There's no other option. It's there in the syllabus. So these sort of answers are also welcome. Okay, I have gotten response for updating knowledge. Okay, to find new things. Fine. Any other reason? Think as a physiotherapist to find out effects. Well, we're getting into the groove. As a physiotherapist, to know something new among our daily activity in new way, okay, to collect data information about community disorder, find the efficiency of treatment, to get impactful treatments, okay. Fine, well then I have a set of people who are clear with what research is, to be updated and will be helpful in evidence-based practice. Well, thank you for those responses. So the basic thing is evidence-based practice. That's the main reason why research has been highlighted so much nowadays, because we are in an era of evidence-based practice where most of our treatment techniques, most of our diagnostic procedures needs to be evidence-based. Even the knowledge of evidence is so high that like most of the population, they come and ask like, is this treatment appropriate for me? What is the proof that this treatment is going to be effective for my particular condition or particular symptom? So this is a era of evidence-based practice, and evidence-based practice basically provides a guideline for clinical practice in every field, especially in medicine and healthcare professional field, and to be precise in physiotherapy. And this creates a knowledge base based on which whatever treatment we are giving, whatever assessment we are doing, there is a proper base for that. Like there is a reason behind doing all these things. So there is a strong link between evidence-based practice and research, because research is considered to be the basic step, the first step to evidence-based practice. If you talk about education, that is physiotherapy education, talk about physiotherapy practice, or if you talk about any new innovation in physiotherapy, everything is linked with research. So this interlink is the one which keeps evidence-based practice going on. Along with this puts up lots of question. You can see that the reflection is what it does in physiotherapists. As per the European region of WCPT, they have published an article based on why research is very important in physiotherapy. According to them, physiotherapists need to ask certain questions. They have to reflect certain queries during their practice. Say, for example, one question is, how is research going to be having an impact on my clinical practice? So you cannot just practice on your own without having a proper basis of whether that particular treatment is going to be working or not. So what is the impact any research is going to have on my clinical practice? Can I incorporate the evidences, that is whatever findings that have been implicated from the research. Can I use those things in my clinical practice? Is it applicable? Is it properly generalizable to my practice? Or is there need for more research to be done in my particular area? Because there are lots of areas where we don't have answers. There are lots of areas in our practice where we don't know why we are doing it. So do we need any specific research to be done to find out whether these practices, what we are doing, is it effective to the core or not? So based on these things, the research becomes very mandatory. Apart from this, one of the most important moral and professional obligation for physiotherapists is that we have to use our research findings in clinical practice so that we can move away from the techniques that we are using, mainly based on anecdotal testimonies or opinion. Say, for example, if I'm more interested towards working, I'm more oriented towards, I'm more interested towards, or I'm more biased towards using a specific technique, say, for example, laser therapy for any treatment, any symptom. Probably whenever students come and ask me, or any clinical therapist who is my colleague who asked me what can be the pain relieving modality as well. So that becomes more of an expert opinion which has got the least level of evidence. So probably it is our moral obligation before using it or before advising anybody else to use it, that it has got some evidence, research-based evidence supporting that it can be effective in treating a particular condition or in that fact a symptom. So physiotherapy research, there is a need for positive and enabling research culture. Research is gaining lots of importance nowadays. Unfortunately, research as a whole is gaining lots of importance. When lots of importance is given to any particular area, there are lots of impurities which happens in that. So a proper research culture is required where we perform research in a proper way, considering all the good characteristics of research. At the same time, we encourage others also to do that. Being an academician myself, or to any other academician who is attending this webinar, possibly that would be a very great responsibility, because there are UG researches happening, there are PG researches happening. Students come to us, students ask opinion about how to do. Rather than giving expert opinion, giving them an answer which they are supposed to follow blindly, we can guide them to go up with lots of, an independent autonomous research activities. So this will obviously, this research culture will enable and sustain research environments where the culture will grow up basically. So we are from every point, that is whether you are an academician, whether you're a clinician or a student, we all together have to do these things. So possibly what can happen when we have all these things, what is required for having all these things, one is the passionate and effective leadership. And especially this is in terms of teachers, mentors, guides, who are guiding students for research. We require a good amount of passion in conducting research and in helping students conduct research. A good amount of collaboration is very essential. Normally I hear people saying that clinical therapist does not have much of research work because they are not interested, or academicians are supposed to do research work because it is part of the curriculum, it is part of the teaching. In fact, I would reverse that particular statement, because clinical therapists are the ones who can do better research. They are having good access to patients, day-to-day practice. They are dealing with patients on a regular basis. So they are the best people to conduct research. In fact, the best research practices can happen when we have a collaboration between academicians, between clinical therapists, and in fact, collaboration between different organizations and different institutions. And the most important need for research culture is organizations that value research. It can be any organization, it can be in a hospital, it can be a clinical setup, it can be a small center, it can be an academic institute, it can be a university. At any level, the organization values research. That's a big asset for research culture. Of course, we need a community framework, because patients always form part of the research what we are performing. And ethical practice. The most important thing is research without ethical values normally does not have any outcome. So say, for example, when you conduct a research and the results cannot be generalizable to a varied population, a varied set of people, the research results are helpful for the patients, for the co-physiotherapist, or for the students. If it is not useful, definitely it is not ethical, it is unethical. And any research which is putting the patient into risk, even if the effects are very minimal or there are no benefits for the patient, even that is unethical. So basically, research needs to be taken in an ethical way, And of course, opportunities for quality research training. Training is very essential. And I have highlighted quality research because when we say quality research, that means research which is done in a good way. There is a very generalized statement which I normally use: no research is 100% perfect. So we are not talking about the picture perfect research that is supposed to be done, but known biases, known confounding factors are supposed to be taken into consideration. Most of the time when we take into consideration the ethical and moral values of research, automatically the research becomes a quality bound and a good research. So when I say quality research, it has got certain characteristics. There are basic 6 characteristics of good research. The first one is systematic. So we do research in day-to-day life very normally. Whenever we are given an option, whenever we are given choices, we choose one out of everything. Say choosing the mobile phone what we want, choosing the car what we want to buy, or choosing a house. We have lots of options available, and we certainly we pick up certain factors which we want, and then we choose one among them. Basically, that is what is called as research. When you have multiple options, you try to get the best out of everything. The only difference between a scientific research and this very casual research is that, like, scientific research is done in a systematic way. When we say systematic way, there is a process. The entire process is taken into consideration step by step. Each and every stage is crossed, and then we try to put everything based on scientific value. That is what is systemic. Second is empirical. Empirical is basically fact based. So whatever research question we try to bring upon, whatever research process we are doing, that should be having a factual basis. It should not be, airborne without any proper theoretical basis. Third is control. Any research, when we do, like, it's called as an experiment. Research is basically called as an experiment. When we do an experiment, there are lots of factors which can come in between the cause and the effect. You want to impose a factor, and you want to try to find out the effect. There may be lots of factors which might affect the outcome. So to avoid the other factors and to find out the results that whatever I have tried, that is the only reason for the effect. To find out that, we need to have controlled environment where all the other factors which can affect the outcome are supposed to be kept under control. So that is what is control, one of the other characteristics. And then rigorous is it should be done in a strict way. I can give an example for this. Basically, if you are trying to find out your outcome is basically blood pressure, you want to try to find out the effect of a drug or effect of physical activity or any exercise on blood pressure. Say, for example, you have 2 or 3 groups, and in one of the groups, you're measuring the blood pressure in the morning, and you're supposed to make sure that all the blood pressure measurements are supposed to be taken during the same specific time. It's not exactly the same time, close to those times. This example suits well for the controlled as well as the rigorous factors of characteristics of research. We know that, like, blood pressure is affected, can have variations based on the day, based on the stress levels of the patient, anxiety levels of the patient, or based on even the food intake. Before lunch, after lunch, there are variations in blood pressure. Even we have diurnal variations. So when we know that, when we take the blood pressure measurements in one group in one particular period of time, and then we change the particular timing in the other group, or say, for example, we take the blood pressure measurement pre-values at a particular time, say morning, and the post values in the evening, even that can affect your results. So it should be strictly followed. Certain factors which might affect your results supposed to be taken into consideration in a strict way. That is the 4th component. And then we have the 5th component, that is valid and verifiable. Whatever methods we use in research, that should be valid. It should be measuring what it is supposed to measure, and it is supposed to be verifiable. Any person who wants to take up your research and go for further research in the same area, it should be available for them easily to verify and continue with the same process. That way it should be valid and verifiable. And the final one is critical. Our research process, as I said, no research is 100% perfect, but at the same time, it should be less critical in nature, so that, like, major flaws which are known to the researcher already should be avoided in a research process. So these are the basic 6 characteristics of any good research. I repeat again: the first one is systematic, second is controlled, third is rigorous, fourth is valid and verifiable, critical, and empirical. So when we have good research, of course, we have to talk about bad research as well. Like, so it's quite easy to say that, like, bad research is something whichever is not following the steps of a good research, whichever is not having a characteristics of a good research, that's what is called as bad research. Of course, yes. Along with that, some experiments or some research which is poorly designed, which is not properly conducted, that becomes a bad research. And research where normally, because nowadays physiotherapists are well versed with statistics and everything. So rather than learning the basics of statistics to apply it in a proper way, we learn statistics to manipulate the data. So any data that is manipulated at the collection level or during the analytical level, that's again a bad research. Invalid conclusions, where based on the results and analysis, we try to come up with a conclusion of our own which does not match the objective or does not match the basic methodology. That again is a bad research. Incorrect predictions. And we are not supposed to predict. If you want to predict, why do you want to go for a research? So basically, the conclusion part of a research should not be based on predictions, rather should be based on what results you have obtained. And finally, inconsistent findings. Now, I can give an example. Just yesterday, we had a talk, like one of my friend, today is a trend of Corona, COVID-19. So one of my friend had called from Tamil Nadu, and he said like, good that we have overtaken Gujarat in the number of cases. And I think like Tamil Nadu, the administration is not proper, that this and everything. So I got an idea from this, like, and this basically forms a defective basis for any further study. So now I give this Corona example, COVID-19 updates regarding the number of cases in the next slide. Now here, if you see, this is, I have not taken the entire states, I've taken the top 4 states, in fact. Top 4 states, right. So if you see, like, again, I'm concerned only about the 2 places, that is Tamil Nadu and Gujarat. So Tamil Nadu is having a positive total confirmed cases of 16,277. Fine. That is, I mean, higher than Gujarat. We are so happy about that. Even my friend was more concerned about that. Gujarat is just 14,000 cases and Tamil Nadu 16,277 cases. Now this gives the wrong conclusion basically. Actually, if you see the other side, it is partial interpretation of the numbers or the results, whatever we can say. If you talk about the number of deaths, you can see that like Tamil Nadu has got only 111 deaths despite having lots of positive cases, whereas Gujarat has got 858 deaths as compared to the number of confirmed cases. So the entire picture changes. So basically, this is an example of how a partial representation or interpretation of a data can completely distort the outcome of a research. So this is not an exact example of research, but this is just a number example what I've given. I've taken these records today morning by around 10:15 a.m. So there might be some changes in the numbers. So I'm not sure about that. So that is how we interpret the results. So an example of good results and bad research, this is how we can interpret easily. Why do you identify? Why should we identify good research? What is the need for identifying good research? So the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance as such, it is the illusion of knowledge. So people who say I don't know are much better than people who say I might know. So that is the basic thing. So when you have a paper in hand, when you have a research article in hand, when you have people, researchers besides you, it is not whether they have done research or not that's important. How valuable that research is, that is more important. So a brief summary about the history of progress of research in physiotherapy. The first scientific RCT, that is randomized controlled trial, was published in the year 1929. That was in physiotherapy. Since then, it has grown exponentially higher. And in the year 1990, we had the systematic review and the evidence-based guidelines for physiotherapy. As on Jan 2018, these are the number of reviews and the guidelines. There are almost 7,526 reviews available in PEDRO and 637 guidelines. PEDRO is the physiotherapy evidence database, which is open access for physios. So we have these many reviews and guidelines. Now, this is what we call actually information overload. So lots of articles, lots of journals, lots of physiotherapy guidelines are available. And what is the validity? What is the quality of these guidelines? That is where it becomes more important. So these are the number of RCTs we can see in 1982, they were around 524 RCTs, whereas in 2017, we have 30,476 RCTs. That is the exponential rise in RCTs, which has been evident. Information overload, that means like we have got lots of information available. Now we're confused which information to take, which one is genuine, which one is fake. We don't know, because any published research article is not always valid. Just because it's published does not mean that like it is of high quality. So as I said, no research is 100% perfect. Similarly, every research article might not be relevant to your practice, our area of practice. So according to this study by Gibbon et al., only 6.8% of published research was considered to be of high quality and clinically relevant. Most of the other studies were not relevant or the quality was very low. So they evaluated 60,352 articles and the total number of journals were 170. So they had some pass criteria, they had some grading scale for determining whether the research conducted is of high quality or not. And only 3,059 original articles and 1,073 review articles passed that particular high quality criteria. So this shows that the numbers which are available for us openly, that is very high as compared to the ones which are relevant for us. So it's very important for any category of person or a people. Say, for example, for a researcher, if you're going to conduct a research, if you have a research question in mind, you need to know whether this research question has been answered already or not. So if I have a research question from my practice, for a practitioner, say, for example, say any XYZ treatment, whether it is effective or not, I'm giving this treatment for my patient for almost 15 days. The patient is not coming up with any improvements. So is it effective or not? So you have a research question over here. Directly, you cannot just jump into conducting a research now, because this research question might have been answered previously. So that is where we go to identify good research papers. Like that is where we go into review of literature or literature review. For an academician, since research is an integral component of UG or a PG, or even for promotion of an academician, research is an integral component. So ultimately, searching for very good titles, whether this particular research question has been answered or not, what I am trying to find out, is that unique, is that novel? For this purpose, again, there is a need for literature and searching research articles. Now, when do we search? When to search? So as I said before, whenever you have a research question, to find out whether this research question is relevant and has been answered priorly or not, we try to go for searching it. And to be precise, we have something called as the 7-step research process. The 7-step research process starts with the definition of a research question or a research problem. And this is where if you're a clinical therapist or if you are a student, you get your research question in hand, which is followed by finding out the appropriate literature available, to what extent already studies have been done. And this review literature is not only helpful to find out whether the question has been answered or not, even if it is unanswered, what methods are going to follow, what methods which have been already used in previous studies you are going to adapt. All these things can be found out using the review of literature. There are two types of review of literature as mentioned over here. One is a conceptual review, and other one is a review which is done to just find out the previous research findings. So conceptual review is based on the methods, what you want to use, the theoretical concept, confirmation of what you're trying to find out is relevant or not, all these things. Whereas a review process based on previous research finding is to find out whether the question has been answered or not. And this follows the rest of the process, which is formulating hypothesis and designing the studies, sampling procedures, collection of data, analysis of data, and interpretation and reporting. And since only research searching is our area, our aim of today's webinar, I'm not going to get into these areas in detail. So what are the skills needed if you want to search research? Even for doing research, these are the skills required. There are lots of skills which is required as a researcher. I have highlighted the most common things, 3 common things which is important. One is organizational skills, because research is going to be haphazard process. Like you have 7 steps and you have to start with a proper organized way, systematic way. So you should be developing your organizational skills to the maximum, which is followed by time management, because research process cannot happen over a day or overnight. So you have to be spending a lot of time, and you have to manage time based on your organizational skills. And finally, commitment, your level of interest and how well you can adhere to that particular interest. And that decides again how well you can go for research work. And again, in turn, how you can go and search a research, which is one component of research work. So what are you supposed to search? So again, fastest fingers. I want your answers now. Like, if you're supposed to search something related to research, what would you be searching? Where would you be searching? The word where question comes later. What would you be searching for? Now we have a research question in mind. Any research question. What would you be searching for? Okay, let me put a question just one level below this. How many of you in this group presently have searched something related to research? Have you ever searched something related to research? If yes, what? We have a mixed group as such. If it is only students, I can understand. We have clinical therapists as well. Definitely would have searched something or the other related to research, related to a specific diagnostic procedure or a technique. Keywords related to the topic. Okay, directly we go to the keywords, right? Fine. Anybody have gone for literature search till date? Feel free to answer. No need to worry. There are no marks for this. Keywords, abstract and limitation. Okay. Anything else? So checking for evidence regarding the particular condition. So probably that's what I understand from the responses. We are searching for something very specific. If I have a doubt on any specific technique, I just type the technique and search for it, evidence of that. Or anything specific, any modifications in your search? Any example, if you want to put up an example specifically, you can put up. Okay, we have some academicians as well in our group. Okay, dementia and the ways to cure it. Okay, good. Any idea about the levels of evidences? Okay. So to find out whether the treatment, is there any change in the treatment? If my treatment is not working, past treatment is not working, what about the new option, the alternative for it? Okay. So when you search for research, this becomes very important. So this is called as the evidence-based pyramid, or also called as the hierarchy of evidence. Because when you're talking about evidence and searching articles based on evidence, strongly believe that this needs to be taken into consideration. Now this pyramid shows that at the peak of the pyramid, we have the evidence-based guidelines, which are supposed to be the highest level of evidence, which is followed by the synopsis and other synthesis of evidence, followed by systematic review and meta-analysis. And then comes the RCTs, the randomized control trials. And then we have the cohorts, case control studies, case series and reports. And finally, we have the expert opinion and all the editorials and everything. Now, if you see this pyramid gives an idea that the base of the pyramid is larger and that is the least level of evidence. If you see that in real practice, in clinical practice, that is what is available in abundance. Lots of expert opinions available. Every second, third person will come and say, like, according to my experience, this is what is the best treatment for so-and-so condition. So that is what is available in abundance. Whereas when I talk about the evidence-based protocols, guidelines, that is the least available. I mean, still there are research work happening to generate evidence-based guidelines. So systematic reviews, meta-analysis, which are the highest level of evidences, and the evidence-based guidelines are the least available. That's why they are the higher level of evidence, so they're at the top. They're least available, so they are having the least amount of space for them in the hierarchy pyramid. So basically, when you search for any research article, start from the highest level of evidence. That's the point what I want to make here. Whatever keywords you're using, whatever evidence you're trying to generate, whatever evidence you're trying to find out from the literature which is already existing or available, try to go for the higher level of evidences. That is meta-analysis and systematic reviews. Once you don't get any evidences based on this hierarchy, you can go for the lower level, that is RCTs. Again, I'm not getting into the grade system or grade assessment of evidence, because that gives very low, high, and excellent evidence levels. RCTs also can be of low quality, and even cohort and case controls can have a better quality, where in grade system that exceeds the RCTs. So the quality of, here it is only the study design which is taken into consideration. All the systematic reviews, the RCTs are called as study designs. Whereas the quality of the study also is considered in grade assessment. So probably when you're going to search any evidence or any research article, make sure that along with the study design, the systematic review, you try to find out the quality as well. So that's what you're supposed to search. And where to search? Again, fastest fingers. Where do you search? The previous answers, whatever you gave, you search for evidence, you apply your keywords. Whenever you get a doubt, present, past, and everything, you search something somewhere. Where do you search? Okay, PubMed, Cochrane, fine. Pedro, good. Google Scholar, very good. In different databases, that's a very smart answer. Physiopedia. Okay, so I mean, what are these? What is Cochrane, Pedro, Google Scholar? What are these basically? Is there a difference between a search engine and a database? Okay, PubMed is one popular search engine what we use. Before getting into the different databases and the search engines, we need to find out, we need to understand the difference between a database and a search engine, because most of the time we enter into a search engine and we think that whatever material we receive, whatever material we retrieve from the internet, that is more reliable and valid. Unfortunately, that might land up your search in trouble, not you in trouble. So there is a difference between database and what you call a search engine. So what is a database? A database basically is an area where all the information is collected, organized, and stored, so that later any person with an access can get into it and retrieve the data, whatever is available. And this is an organized way of storing various journals and the articles related to the journal in a single space. That is what is a database. And the advantage of database is that since every journal is archived in this, the database, it always goes through editorial process. Since all the articles and or the journals enter into an editorial process mostly, the articles what you retrieve from a database are considered to be more credible and reliable. Whereas when you talk about search engines, this includes, or this can search unstructured text for you, and it can not only provide you with articles, it can provide you with documents, with images, with videos, and any payload data can be extracted or retrieved from a search engine. And the search engines are the storage of vast reservoir of articles, can have propagandas, opinions, and any documents, whichever is required for you, can have an abundant data from your search engines. And the most important disadvantage of a search engine is that like most of the time it does not go through editorial process. In most of the cases, you don't have a you have a biased material available through search engine as compared to a database. So anybody who has published anything related to the keyword what you're searching, that will be made available. So it becomes your responsibility to find out whether this particular data what I've retrieved from this search engine is it's reliable or not. It becomes a double work for you if you're not getting any information from the database. So of course, search engines are also helpful unless and until they are organized. So some of the commonly used and useful databases, that's what we're going to see. These are not the only databases available. Don't take it that way. These are some of the databases available specifically for healthcare profession, which includes medicine, nursing, and all other allied healthcare professions. So first one is Medlars Online. This is what is shortly called as Medline. Medline is a huge database which consists of a lot of bibliographic database. And Medlar stands for Medical Literature Analysis and Retrieval System Online. That's what is Medlars Online. It is compiled by the National Library of Medicine, and there are more than 26 million records from around more than 5,600 publications of journals covering biomedicine and health, almost all the areas of healthcare profession. And the articles or the journals available here are from the year 1950 to present. So one of the search engine for Medline is what is PubMed. It is a free search engine for Medline. When you use PubMed, the data is retrieved maximally from the Medline database. So ultimately it is editorial based database. So all the materials what you get is highly credible and reliable over here. And you get lots of references, abstracts, full text, and free full text. Everything is not free in PubMed. And then we have second one is Embase, Excerpta Medica database. This is provided by Elsevier, which is one of the leading publishing house in the world. And the amount of data available here is slightly higher than what we have in Medline. So you have more than around 32 million records and 8,500 journals. And since 1947 till date, you have all the materials available here. Again, that can be retrieved. And Embase, the disadvantage is that like it is not free of cost. It is access only to members and they charge. And then of course we have the Cochrane Library. Cochrane Library is a synonymous name for retrieving information, especially systematic reviews and meta-analysis, the highest level of evidence. So this is a database where medicine and healthcare specialties systematic reviews are made available. It has a core collection of Cochrane reviews, that is systematic reviews, which is the highest level of evidence. And then we have SINHAL, which is Cumulative Index of Nursing and Allied Health Literature. We have articles, as the name suggests, articles related to nursing and allied health. And again, some articles can be available, can be retrieved free of cost, and some are paid over here. Then of course we have PEDRO, only for physiotherapy evidence database. And they have their own PEDRO scale, which tries to grade a study, the what you can call that, the level of a study, how good a level of a study is. They have their own scale, which is proven to be a valid scale for quality of determining the quality of a research study. And again, this gives bibliographic database which contains randomized trials. Clinical practice guidelines are also available here because it's providing evidence for physiotherapy practice, and of course systematic reviews are also available. Compared to Embase and Cochrane or your PubMed or Medline, the number of articles that can be retrieved from PEDRO is very less. And finally, we have Google Scholar. Somebody said Google Scholar. Google is a search engine, pure search engine. Google Scholar is still in a confusion because even Google is not clear in terms of exhibiting whether they are a search engine or a database. In fact, it is also considered to be a bibliographic search engine because most of the articles read from Google Scholar are, of course, coming through editorial process, but still you have some impurities without editorial process or what I can say, peer-reviewed processed articles. Non-peer reviewed process articles are also available in Google Scholar. So it cannot be considered as a pure database. It can be considered as a bibliographic search engine or a database. So mostly it contains peer-reviewed online academic journals and books. Of course, it contains, but most of the articles, even you have non-peer-reviewed articles and journals also. Theses and dissertations are available. Published and unpublished data is also made available in Google Scholar. That can be considered an advantage when it comes to the number of data that can be retrieved. But when it comes to the quality of data, Google Scholar is questionable. So these are some of the major databases and search engines available through which we can improve our search process and get some good articles for our review of literature. Now, how to search? Again, fastest fingers. How do you search normally? The basic idea behind searching. Because search can happen in many ways. Different databases use different strategies of searching. So we'll be seeing an example of how to search in PubMed. I'll be discussing that with you people. But probably I'm trying to get some idea about other databases. If there are people who have gone through some specific database, I have not gone through all the databases. If you have some good strategy of searching, that's what I'm expecting here. So when you search in any of the databases, you have any strategy to follow? Any specific strategy how you search? Anybody? Any strategy? Where do you start from when you want to search? Technically, when you want to search with proper keywords. Well done. How do you choose a keyword? How to choose a keyword? By using NN plus. Okay, that's becoming more technical. Right. Based on research question, needed keywords. Right. Of course, that's what I was expecting. The keywords are based on your research question. So the easy way to choose your keyword is based on the PICO format, what we call as PICO. One is P stands for population, I stands for the intervention, C for the comparator or the comparison, and O for the outcome. So if you have decided your population, the research question becomes very easy. And when you add up the intervention, what you want to find out, the effect of a particular treatment, say for example, it becomes more easier. And when you have a comparator, that is like I want to compare my treatment technique with some other treatment which has been established as a good technique or a best technique, you want to compare with that. And on what outcome you're trying to compare these things, your intervention and the comparison. What are the outcome measures? If this is clear, your keywords becomes very easy. Probably you can choose your keywords based on the population. You can choose keywords based on the intervention. You can choose keywords based on the comparison, or you can choose keywords based on outcome, or a combination of all. So that is the basic thing, because since the databases are web-based, and it's called as web because once you enter into that, like you've got lots of areas where you can explore. So normally we get lost if you don't have a specific keyword in mind, or if you don't have a specific research question in mind. So my suggestion, and based on my experience, is that like never ever sit and search without having any proper idea in mind. So keyword. So this is what happens. That's the reason why we go for it. Like now I know, like I'm supposed to go to PubMed, I'm supposed to search what to search. I have lots of results now. What to do? Now lots of databases are available for me. Where to start from? So that's where this is. I would just like to shift my sharing from this to the internet, that is the web-based. We'll have a. So this is what a PubMed screen looks like. So most of you might be aware of this particular screen if you have already searched PubMed for your materials. So it's free. You can have a free sign up. The advantage of signing up is that like when you use a keyword and search it, that'll be present in your history. You can even email whatever you have searched, the articles, to your email. So it's a free database search engine, so you can sign up always, and then search with, can go to PubMed. As I said, PubMed is a search engine which searches articles and journals specifically from Medline database. So this will be retrieving all the data from Medline sources. So say for example, we'll start with a keyword like, I want to know whether aquatic exercise is effective as compared to conventional physiotherapy, or you can say a land-based exercise in patients with knee osteoarthritis. So we have the PICO here, the patient population, that is patients with knee osteoarthritis, that is my population. My intervention is aquatic therapy because I want to find out whether aquatic therapy is effective or not. I'm comparing aquatic therapy to land-based exercises, what normally we give to patients with knee osteoarthritis. Say outcome measure, we can say pain or a range of motion, or a WOMAC score, improvement in WOMAC score, functional improvement, or you can say like timed up and go test, which is a functional test to find out whether patients improved or not. So I have the PICO format in mind. I can use any of these keywords to search for articles which are already present, already available in PubMed. We are searching for literature now. So probably I'll be going for aquatic exercise, probably, and I use the Boolean operator and knee osteoarthritis. So I've taken two keywords. One is the population, and second one is the intervention of my interest. So when I use and in operators, basically when you use and, that means all the articles with aquatic exercise as a keyword and knee osteoarthritis as a keyword, both will be taken into consideration. So PubMed will be retrieving all the articles which has aquatic exercise and knee osteoarthritis. So when I search this, so I'm getting 72 results. So these are the results you can see on screen. Now the advantage with PubMed is you have got lots of filters available. You can see this. This is the filters where it's a preset filters which I have taken into account. I have already chosen these filters. So it shows 24 clinical trials because I have filtered only clinical trials. I wanted studies only in English language and studies which are conducted only on human beings. So almost 58 studies are there. I have chosen only free full text. I have not included abstracts and full text, which is paid. So there are 29 articles available. And I wanted to go for articles which are published only in the past 5 years. So if you can see, like if I click on this, I'll be retrieving all those 33 articles. You can see here the number, 33 articles. And these are the articles where you have aquatic exercise and knee osteoarthritis combined. So exercise, knee, hip, and osteoarthritis. Knee osteoarthritis, aquatic exercise and hip and knee osteoarthritis. So imagine I just change this to or aquatic exercise or knee osteoarthritis, and then again go for a search. So I've got 38,359 results, which means the title either has got aquatic word or has got exercise word or has got knee or has got osteoarthritis. So now this increases the number of articles. You can see here clinical trials. I have almost 4,500 clinical trials. English language around humans 27,336. Free full text is 14,000 plus. So again you can see the filters over here. You can see the filters. These are the filters. If I click on full text and go for and, where we have the least number of articles. Previously it was 72. When you go for only full text, I'll select all three. So this is how we can modify your search, changing the filters. So text availability is one, where there are 70 articles which are full text. And then you can go for the type of article. If you want only systematic reviews, you can choose that, where all the clinical trials, everything will be reduced. You can see there are only 16 results now, only systematic reviews, or I can choose only meta-analysis or only RCTs. You can choose accordingly. Even you can choose the year. Increase the number of years to past 10 years instead of 5. Go for RCTs. Sorry for the slow connection as such. So we have 15 results in the past 10 years, full text and randomized control trial. So this way you can have additional filters as well, where you have a separate page where you can choose your filters based on your area of interest, and you want to retrieve more articles from different areas. Based on that, you can again do that. Now, this is how you manipulate the different filters in this. One advantage in PubMed, we have something called as MESH, MESH, that is medical subject heading. Say for example, physiotherapy is a term what we use in Asian countries. Most of the Western countries, this physical therapy, the term what has been used over there. Like, so when you type a word physiotherapy, automatically medical subject heading physical therapy is also considered PubMed search. That's one advantage. You need not search again with physical therapy or physiotherapy separately. Now, possibly if I remove knee osteoarthritis and if I remove exercise, you can see I have got 20 results. So the keyword exercise has been removed and knee has been removed. So only aquatic and osteoarthritis. So I would suggest go with a very broad term, keyword, when you start with, and then slowly narrow it down to the required numbers. Because believe me, 20 to 25 articles, if you get full text and if you download it and start reading or critically appraising, it's going to take a very good amount of time. So it's not easy to go with that. So if you get thousands of articles, obviously like your literature search itself would be a separate research. So this is with your PubMed. If you can go for the dashboard, there's the advantage of signing in. You have your own collections over here. All these things, recent activity. You can see whatever articles I have opened in PubMed after signing in, all those articles are mentioned here as a record. These are the filters which I have already fixed for me. So whenever I open, need not go for filters every time. So if I'm signed in, these filters can be retained inside and I can continue with my work without much of changes. And this is again the recent activity. You can even mail your recent activities. That is also possible with this. If you have, because normally when you apply keywords and you forget what keywords you applied last time when you signed in with PubMed, probably when you change the keywords, automatically the what you can say, the articles what you get also changes. So if you want to keep a track of whatever keywords you use, like it's always better to sign in so that it'll be easy for us to keep in record what keywords we use and what happens. This is one example what I want to show you here. You can see the time, the date, time, everything, whatever you searched on PMC, that is PubMed Central, or in NLM catalog, National Library of Medicine catalog, or even in books, whatever has been searched and it is available over here. So if you want to come back again tomorrow and retrieve this, like I'm just supposed to click on this, like I can retrieve everything. So that's an advantage of signing in with PubMed. As I said, it is free sign up, and this is one of the most sought of and most advantageous search engine in healthcare profession. And most of the articles, if it is an open access journal, you get full text, free full text available. Some of the articles you might not be getting full text, you might be having only abstracts. So now, so hope everything is fine till now. If you have any questions, you can type in now before getting into the next component. Okay. Now that's how we search using PubMed. And as I said, like searching, the technicality of searching in different databases, that itself can be conducted as a separate webinar, because we have lots of databases. Pedro search has got different searching strategies, and the way we sort certain filters and the keywords, the Boolean operators. There are certain modifications in different databases. So that itself can be a separate webinar. So I think I suggest that like you go and experiment with all these areas. The more you experiment with the keywords, with the filters and everything, you'll be more familiar with retrieving the data. Now we have searched everything. There were lots of articles available. Now we had a separate session in the beginning which said that like good research. There is something called as characteristics of good research. Now we have articles in hand. How will you find out that this information overload, the article overload, whatever articles I have received, is it good? Is it useful to me or not? Because most of the time, we don't go into the depth of analyzing an article, what is available to us. The reason for that is 75% of us, we don't understand statistics because we are science students. We are very poor with statistics. Statistics is not that difficult. And 70% cannot critically appraise a research paper. And that is a skill basically. We read a research paper. Reading is of two types. One is critical reading and one is casual reading. Casual reading is the way we read a newspaper. We just go through the headlines and some keywords inside relevant to that, like say for example, number of COVID cases in Ahmedabad increased. This is the headline. So inside the paragraph, we just try to find out which area in Ahmedabad is having lots of positive cases. We just try to catch up the keyword. We don't read each and every word by word. So that is called as a casual reading. What is critical reading? Critical reading is that we try to analyze each and every statement of that particular paragraph. Say if they say suddenly there was a rise in number of cases in a particular area, we try to understand why that area, what happened in that area, what was the reason for the rise in that positive cases in that particular area, what is so special about that area. You start analyzing those aspects. Each and every statement in a paragraph is analyzed. That is what is critically appraising. So when you take a research paper in your area, that is in our area, physiotherapy, imagine a treatment option given, imagine an outcome measure given, imagine a comparison given. So if a method is given, we try to analyze the method. Is this a method to perform that particular exercise? Is it the method to evaluate or diagnose a particular method? Is that appropriately given or not? Based on that, you decide whether your research article, what has been retrieved from a database, is that a good one, or is it of use, or it's just a garbage? So that is what is the skill basically, because technically today we have access to internet, we have web-based databases, we have lots of pirated sites which can give you all full text articles free. You can retrieve full text articles which are paid, basically can be retrieved free of cost. But the disadvantage is that like after retrieving, collecting lots of information, we don't know which information is of good use to us and which one is garbage. So that is the most important skill, which is called as critical appraisal. Again, I'm not going into the depth of critical appraisal because technically we need to practically understand how to word by word critically appraise an article. That is another 1 to 1.5 hours separate webinar or a seminar. I'm just going to give the basic idea about critical appraisal. What are the components we are supposed to observe in short? And then if you try these components by yourself at your workplace or at your home, probably you might be getting a lot of ideas, and if possible, if you people can communicate with me or any other person who is good with research. So definitely you can share knowledge. We can share knowledge and learn what critical appraisal is. So critical appraisal is a process which basically means we ask ourselves, I have an article in my hand. Is this result of these articles, is it correct? Are they clear with what they are saying? And are they good with what they are saying? And can that be applied to my own research practice? When you start asking these questions and try to find answers in that particular article, so that is what is a critical appraisal. The reason for critical appraisal is, as we have discussed before, there is a huge information overload, vast and ever expanding literature is available. We have to combat the information overload. So I have lots of articles. I have downloaded almost 100 articles on a specific topic, but I have not gone through the articles. How many articles in that are helpful? How many procedures are helpful to me from those articles? I don't know. So For that purpose, I have to go for a critical appraisal. I have to identify the papers or the articles, research papers, which are relevant to my practice, relevant to my research question. And by this, I can keep myself up to date. Apart from that, the research question, what I have in mind, probably after critical appraisal, I might be getting answers to those research questions. Those doubts, what I had in my clinical practice, why this particular treatment is effective in some condition, why this is not effective in other conditions, probably I might be getting answers to that. And most importantly, for students who are attending this particular webinar, this critical appraisal would be of very good help if you are pursuing a research interest. I didn't say pursuing research alone, because you have to pursue research in UG and PG, which is mandatory or compulsory. It is for pursuing a research interest, you have to learn critical appraisal. Again, rather than asking question and waiting for answers, let me put my assumptions. Normally, when we read an article, we are more concerned with the title of the article. We read the title. If the title is impressive and relevant to my question, I immediately pick that up. And then we read the abstract in a very casual way, the way the example I gave, like reading a newspaper. I pick up all those keywords which are, positive towards my question, which is a biased approach towards reading. I read the abstract very randomly or selectively. And then I skip the introduction component. I go to the methods. Again, the technical component, what exercise was given, whether there is a picture. If there is a picture done, we are concentrating only on the pictures. We never go to the text. And then result section, normally we skip because it's more of numbers, and number is not my cup of tea. So I skip all those things. And then the conclusion. What do they conclude? This treatment is effective or not effective? Chat box is on. You can correct me if I've exaggerated certain things. This is how we read a research paper. And this is based on my experience, again, my expert opinion, the least level of evidence. Students, whether they are from UG or PG, or even to some extent my colleagues, they skip the literature component, they complete the entire research, and then only for writing up, they go for the literature, which is absolutely a wrong method of research. So when you read an article, this is not the way to read an article, right? So I'll give a simple example of how to read an article. The article should be read from top to bottom, that is head to toes, because every component of a research article gives you information. Information about the title, whether the title is relevant to your subject, irrelevant to your subject interest, whether it is following the PICO format, whether it is addressing the same population, the same intervention, the same comparison, and the same outcome measure, what you are trying to find out. The expert area of the researcher, the name, the associations, and the designation of the researcher, whether they're qualified enough to conduct a research in that particular area, even that can be understood from the research article only if you go through it. At least bother about the name of the researcher or the associations. That's also a wrong procedure. Abstract needs to be read twice. I'll come to that later. You have to read abstract twice. Yes, I think we have a question from a participant. Somebody raised the hand. Yes, please. Hope it is for a question and not by mistake. Is there a question?
Sir, someone is asking.
Can you enlighten about the PICO format?
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, PICO format is, is relevant to the title or in general? Even for framing a research question, PICO format is the strategy for framing a better research question, because research question cannot come from anywhere. So if you are framing a title, if you are reading an article title, even the PICO format should be present over there, which means the title is very descriptive. And that does not mean that if the PICO format is not followed, the title and the article is not appropriate. Normally, the title should be descriptive. The PICO is the population. As I said, the example, the effect of aquatic exercise compared to land-based exercise on pain and functionality in patients with knee osteoarthritis. Now, if this is the title of an article which you have retrieved, possibly you have all the components of PICO here. That is, the patient population is mentioned, which is patients with knee osteoarthritis. That is your population. And intervention is mentioned. Intervention is aquatic exercise. They're comparing aquatic exercise with land-based exercise. So land-based exercises can be considered to be the conventional program, which is running for many years. Now, aquatic exercise, I want to bring that as a new program and compare whether that is giving better outcome or equal outcome as compared to your land-based conventional program. So aquatic exercise is my intervention. The land-based program is my comparison. The outcome measure is pain and functionality. So this is what you try to find out from the title, whether the population of interest has it been mentioned, is the intervention mentioned clearly, is the comparator that is mentioned over there or not, and what are the outcomes they have used. So if we are clear with this, then we can go into the abstract. Now, introduction is again abstract. You're supposed to go through the components of abstract. Normally you have the background, the method, what they have used in abstract, the results in summary, and the conclusion, what they want to conclude. So we have to see whether the background information, why they have done the study in the abstract, what they mentioned, that matches with the methods and the results and the conclusion. Normally abstract consists of limited words. So we cannot we cannot expect to be elaborate. So keep that in mind. The main draft of the article, that is the introduction, the methodology section, everything should be matching with what they mentioned in the abstract. So read the abstract very clearly, casually, not casually, critically, and then come to the introduction component. The introduction should be having the background information about what they're trying to find out. Normally, introduction is like a story. They have to connect between the population, the intervention, the comparator, and the outcome measures. All these things are supposed to be connected, and they have to conclude the introduction based on why they are doing this study. What is the significance of the study? What is the objective behind performing this study? That should be the concluding paragraph for an introduction. Followed by that, the methodology. Methodology, if they are using any modifications from a standard procedure, it includes normally the sampling procedures, the sample size calculation, the inclusion criteria, the exclusion criteria, and what techniques they have used to measure the outcome. All these things are supposed to be elaborated. So whether these are clearly mentioned in that with pictures or without pictures, those things are supposed to be seen in method section critically. And we have to go for the results section, where whether appropriate statistical tests have been used, what do they want to do? Here in this example of aquatic exercise, we're comparing two treatments. So possibly before and after, the pre and post treatment measurements are what we are concerned with, what we are interested with. So probably within group and between group comparisons are what is what will be made over here. So probably if the data is normally distributed, they might have gone for a parametric test. The data is not normally distributed, they might have gone for a non-parametric test. So the type of statistical test what they have used, the demographic characteristics of the participants. So when they were divided into two groups, so was there homogeneity? To find that out, like from the baseline, what was the demographic characteristics of both the groups? Those tables are supposed to be critically studied. And then the statistical hypothetical testing, what they have done, whether it is a t-test or a non-parametric test, what they have done, what is the p-value, what is the difference in mean, how statistically significant were the differences, the mean differences. All those things are supposed to be critically appraised in the results section. Followed by that, the discussion section of the article. What have they discussed? Like, have they discussed the results of their study? Are these discussions matching with the objectives of their study? Have they taken other studies which have been done in the past and compared those studies with their study? Was there any differences between the previous studies that has been done and this particular study? Was there any major controversy between the results what they have obtained and the previous studies? Have they included all these things? So when you discuss, it's not only the significant things which are supposed to be discussed, even the non-significant things can be discussed. I'm talking about the result, not the significance in terms of objectives or the method. I'm talking about the results. So all these things are supposed to be discussed. And finally, the conclusion. What do they conclude based on the results of their study? Their objective was to find out whether aquatic exercise is better than land-based exercise. And their results state that aquatic exercise are giving better improvements as compared to land-based exercise. So they conclude that instead of going for a land-based exercise, because of the effectiveness and the advantages, you can use aquatic exercise in patients with knee osteoarthritis to reduce pain and to improve functionality. So this is basically an example of how a conclusion should be. So other than that, what are the further recommendations they are giving? what are the pitfalls in their particular study, what are the limitations, and what are the assumptions they are making. Conclusions can be should be very specific, same as discussion. So the physiological mechanism of how this was effective can be discussed, because in this example, aquatic exercise, we know that like what are the physiological changes that leads to improvement. So those can be discussed. So after completing all these things, we have to check for the citations, the references that has been given in the article, whether whatever words, whatever methods they have used, have they cited properly. It's not so that like they have taken somebody else's research work and they have mentioned it as their own. So when you do not cite, it automatically means that it's your statement. So wherever you're taking statement of others, it needs to be cited. So whether there is match between the references and citations, the reference text matching should be possible. Again, go back to the abstract. Abstract needs to be read twice. Now, initially we read the abstract as a trailer. Now we entirely completed the appraisal of the article. Again, we come back to the abstract and cross-verify whatever they mentioned in the abstract and whatever they mentioned in the draft, the entire text, that is matching or not. So I give one example to my students whenever I say this. Normally we watch movies. Before watching movies, trailers are out. So we watch a trailer, we get impressed with the trailer, we go and watch a movie. I have a habit of coming back and watching the trailer again. There are lots of instances where there are certain interesting components in the trailer which does not take part in the movie at all. So when you come back and check the trailer again, that part is missing in the main movie. You might have experienced this, like, I mean, check all the trailers and the movies what you've watched. So that is how you're supposed to read abstract twice. Like I read the abstract before watching the movie, that is the full text. I read the full text, again I come back for the trailer and check whether all the components are matching or not. So when you do that, your critical appraisal is complete. So that is how we are supposed to critically appraise an article. By appraising this, what do you get? When you appraise this, there are three main components what we're trying to find out here. The first one is validity. When you do a critical appraisal, does the article have appropriate methodology? When I say methodology, it includes the treatment what I'm giving, the comparison what I'm making, and the outcome measure what I'm measuring. Whatever I'm measuring, is that proper or not? Because if your measurement, your treatment is not appropriate, if your comparison is not appropriately done, if the outcome measure is not done using valid procedure, your entire research is a flaw. Because the entire results of a study is based on this methodology. So that is one component which you're supposed to strongly appraise. That is whether the article has got an appropriate methodology, which includes the outcome measures, what they have used. Have they used the appropriate outcome measure, a patient-oriented outcome measure? Have they used the appropriate technique of interest? Have they used the appropriate comparison or not? And second one is the result. So normally we are concerned with p-value, which is less than 0.05. Apart from that, how strong or how larger the effect of the result is, that is supposed to be understood. A larger treatment effect means that compared to the treatment which is already given, the present treatment has got very good benefits. That is what is a literal meaning of having a treatment effect, larger treatment effect. So the result should be having a better treatment effect as compared to the comparative group. And the third one is relevance. I've got a proper methodology. It is valid, no problem. The results are good. There is a good amount of treatment effect. Now, can I apply all these things to my clinical practice? Is the results of the article, whatever they have done, is it practically possible to be applied in my area? I can give an example, like when we have this journal clubs of my PG students. Normally they come and present papers on robotic assisted physiotherapy, on lots of technical based diagnostic or treatment options. So one of the major problem what we have implementing those, the result says it is highly effective. Conclusion says that like robotic assisted physiotherapy is the best for say stroke population. But the problem is that it is not cost effective. So in an institution or in a OPD based clinical center or in a hospital where they are charging say 100 rupees per visit, is it possible for them to have cost effectiveness when they use this particular highly effective evidence-based robotic assisted physiotherapy technique? So there the relevance fails. So when you appraise an article along with validity, along with the treatment effect, we are all supposed to consider the relevance of the particular technique also. So searching an article appropriately, analyzing an article, critically appraising an article gives an idea about all these things. So quick tips for appraisal. Appraisal is done mostly using common sense. I'm not saying like it does not have a technical aspect. It has a technical aspect, but it's mostly based on common sense. You need not be a statistical expert to understand the numbers, what is given in an article. When you appraise a few articles on your own, taking lots of time, understanding the basic components of statistics like the baseline data, the mean or the p-value or the t-value and everything, you automatically become an expert slowly, because we are not required to be an expert in statistics with understanding all the formula and everything. We are just supposed to understand what test is required where. That is a thing that can be that can come with practice. There are lots of checklists available based on different types of articles. For systematic reviews, you have checklists for critical appraisal. For RCTs, you have checklist for critical appraisal. So using that will be helpful for you to definitely appraise the articles on your own. And only when you appraise these articles, you can decide whether that particular article is valid and relevant, whether you are planning to use that in a clinical practice, or you're going to use that article as your mother article or mother articles, whether you're going to use it in your ROL, in your thesis, whatever. Only then you can decide it. So we have come to the end of the session. To summarize, what I would say is research in physiotherapy is very essential, because only through research we can expand the knowledge and we can increase the legitimacy of the profession. It is very important to, since we call ourselves as independent practitioners, research and evidence based on the external validity of the research, only that can help us prove ourselves independent and autonomous. This is the foundation. Research, conducting a research, searching research, critically appraising an article, and using that critical appraisal knowledge in your clinical practice. These forms the foundation for our professional practice. This should be conducted, research should always be conducted in close connection with education, of course, since education institutions have made it mandatory for students, UG level and at PG level. So it is happening over there, but a good collaboration of research in education and in clinical practice is very essential. I think that is one area where we need to improve ourselves, collaborating with clinical therapists and then conducting research. And when we do such sort of collaborations with education, academician, that is academician, clinical therapist, and of course students, we can increase the quality of healthcare what we can provide to our patients. Our patients can get the best evidence-based treatment approaches, which will be producing objective outcomes from the patient, rather than the patient feeling better, but there is no improvement in functionality. Those are things won't happen. So that's with the summary. So probably if you have any questions, you can shoot up in the chat box. If you have less questions, I think you can switch on your mics and start. If you have more questions, you can use the chat box. I have provided my email ID and my mobile number, this my WhatsApp number as such. So if you have any queries, any point of time, if you have any difficulty in your research or stuck with any research aspect, definitely I'm there to help you. So you can be in touch with me. So any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
हाँ, जो भी attendees है, आपके जो प्रतिभाव है वो हमें email कर सकते हैं. ईमेल एड्रेस है ceo@vnpatelmedicalcampus.com पर आपके जो सुझाव है, अभी आगे सीरीज आने वाली है, उसमें हमें इम्प्रूवमेंट के लिए कोई आपके प्रतिभा है वो भेज सकते हैं. ज्ञान का समुद्र है आपके सामने था. डॉक्टर सर्वानंद सर ने पूरी डिटेलिंग के साथ रिसर्च किया है, वो पूरी इंफॉर्मेटिव और डिटेल में आपको समझाया. और कुछ भी क्वेरी हो तो आप उनसे कांटेक्ट कर लीजिए. उनका नंबर और ईमेल एड्रेस अब आपके पास आ गया है. Dr. Mehul Contractor, please give your words to Dr. Sarvanand sir.
Sarvanand sir, thank you very much for enlightening our student on a topic, research. The main important thing that I would like to enlighten over here is the point you mentioned that there is overloaded. The research articles are overloaded right now in every site. Wherever we hunt, we get a lot of research. But all the viewers and all the listeners, the Sarvanand sir has mentioned one thing very nicely, that one should understand that amongst all those, thousand and thousand research, which one is a good one in a practice? That to identify is very difficult, and that thing you need to learn a lot, repeatedly, again and again and again, and that thing is being done by only a practice, and that practice will be done by a critical appraisal. Without that, you won't be able to identify amongst this overloaded the research publication which is there on the open access medias, right? Amongst that, which one is will be the correct one for me to go for that particular patient? So many students, and they have raised the question like, research, we are hunting for research for the treatment protocol, for finding a treatment, or for a betterment of the patient. If the patient is not getting recover, what to do? Okay, so for that purpose, there is, if Saravanan sir has found osteoarthritis, so many n number of articles came into picture, but which one to pick? That is very important, and that will be done not only by one practice. Okay, repeatedly, again and again. Even see, if I am not wrong, Saravanan sir and myself, including many of the faculty, in today's era also, we are hunting and research, we are
It
also
is a
practicing.
non-stop. It's a non-stop process.
It's a non-stop process, right? So all the viewers, that I would like to convey one single message to you, that webinar absolutely fantastic, no doubt in that, but your duty is remain yet, and that is what, now go back, sit, recall all the points what sir has said, and now amongst the overloaded article, how to find the correct one, and that correct one, in that you have to go in depth of critical appraisal. So this is how you have to go through the whole process. And the one thing which Sarvanan said very nicely and very correctly, many of the people missed out, but I was expecting, and sir has put that point into it, that once you see the abstract and then go into the article, again come back to the abstract and see whether all the agenda is covered or not. Very important point, because many of the time the things are getting missed out in that. So to understand the research is very important at that particular point of time. So the point which I wanted sir to cover, that by default he has covered. So I'm really happy, sir, that you have enlightened our students and all the viewers all around the globe, and those who are watching on Facebook. I would like to convey my thanks to Dr. Saravanan sir for having an wonderful platform for our student. And thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity of interaction. And I got good responses from the audience as such whenever I ask question, because webinar normally it's a one-way platform. You keep talking and interaction is less possible. And being a teacher, I cannot conduct a lecture without interaction.
ये भी ज्ञान पिपासा पे निर्भर करता है किसकी कितनी ज्ञान पिपासा है.
So I got good responses. People are responding it. That's good. Like even academicians are responding, and that will. I mean, that is how. If we teachers come up with some responses, like students automatically follow. Role model, hum hi hai unke liye. So I saw lots of responses. That's good. And as Dr. Mehul said rightly, webinar is just a stimulating point. Like it is not everything. Once you go home and start exploring on these areas, like that's where the right learning, right knowledge starts. So this is just a stimulation. That's it. Thank you, Prakash sir and Mehul sir for this opportunity. Dr. Krutika, thank you very much.
And one more thing that I would like to mention over here, sir. In near future era, by 2020, 2030, I would say 2030, in near future area, in one decade, in our profession, even though at the BPT level, the research throughout the full year, it will be like mandatory kind of stuff, because without research, things will not be possible. Things will never ever gonna be possible. So in one decade, or like in 10 years upcoming, 2030, the researchers will be like, it's a cup of tea for everyone. It will be must. Like, for academician, MPT is must.
PhD,
something like that.
2021 PhD is must.
Yeah, the PhD will be must, and the research will be must for everyone.
Yes.
And they have to, have a deep dive in the ocean of research. They have
patients
to.
Otherwise, it is not. Patients, some educated patients, they are coming up with Google assistants asking that like, I found out that this treatment is very effective for my condition rather than the other one. What do you think?
Correct.
So we are put in a state where we are supposed to be on toes. हमें alert रहना पड़ेगा कि patient आएंगे तो उनको ऐसे कोई treatment दे नहीं सकते हैं. They will demand you.
Evidence
And
based
sir, by
practice.
2020-30, yes, sir, by 2020-30, the patient itself will be so much educated that he will come and show us the article. See, this is what the treatment protocol.
Hey, this is good because in Western countries, especially US and UK and Canada, where your insurance companies have taken over the medical expenditure, there you have to provide evidence. Without evidence, you won't be paid, or in fact, if there is any harm because of your treatment, delay in the improvement because of your treatment, probably will be sued. So our students are going abroad for higher studies and they're settling down over there. So probably they have to use it over there. Without that, in India presently we are let go from these procedures. Like itna strong nahi hai, so manage kar sakte emotionally. Western countries it's not possible. So it's good. We have to go up with the trend. We have to follow the trend.
Yes, definitely, sir. So once again, sir, thank you so much for enlightening our students and all the viewers that watching
Pleasure is mine.
Facebook. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, bye. Sir.